Sorry, I was pressing all the wrong buttons. How you guys doing? My name is Steve. This is Just the News, your morning dose in news. I'm starting a little bit earlier today. One, because the Steven Crowder show is going to be live at 10 o'clock, and I want to listen to it while I'm packing up all of our stuff. So today, all the computers, the studio's all coming down. Everything's getting put into the trailer for its trip up to Virginia. So this is going to be the last video outside of videos that I do on my cell phone and stuff while I'm driving, and once I get set up in Virginia as well, because I'm starting that drive onward tomorrow, and then everything for the next week is going to be intermittent, for anyone that doesn't know. But here's some of the big news stories. I'm just going to give a little disclaimer. I am going to talk about that House Oversight Committee yesterday, specifically a research study that Raskin mentioned at the end of his closing, because I decided some things weren't adding up, so I decided to look into that research study, and I have some interesting things to bring to the light of you and all that stuff. But first, this show is sponsored by Spartan Armor Systems. Visit SpartanArmorSystems.com and use code YEET and get 10% off of your body armor order. And you should do so before you can't buy it anymore, because our administration sucks and they don't want you to be able to protect yourself, as you may or may not know. So yesterday in San Jose, California, a gunman opened fire, killing 8 people before killing himself. He also apparently set a bomb or some sort of incendiary device to explode right around the same time as he was shooting everybody and killing them. His house also caught fire. The bomb-sniffing dogs at the location also alerted to explosive material, although they haven't said if they found any other bombs. I believe the location's been cleared now. The man was identified as a late 50-year-old white guy named Sam something Cassidy, I believe his name was. There's not a lot known about him thus far. He was an employee. All the people that were killed were also county employees as well. It's a very tragic scenario. It is one that likely the mainstream media is going to continue covering too. Well, for 2 reasons. One, I don't believe they've said what kind of gun he's used yet, but they're going to. And secondly, the shooter is a white male, and that fits all the different things that they go. They're not going to call it domestic terror. Well, who knows what they'll actually call it? So far they're classifying it as a workplace violence, activity. I personally believe any workplace. I think mass shootings are domestic terror, because now I second guess going into a grocery store, a movie theater, or walking around or mowing my lawn just because of these mass shootings that go on. So if you can't, I don't know why other people choose not to call them what they are, as domestic terror incidents, because that's what they are. But that's the latest update there. Late last night, too, there was 3 police officers who were ambushed after responding to reports of a suicidal man in Flower Mound, Texas. The 3 police officers were shot and wounded Wednesday night while responding to reports of a suicidal man. According to reports, dispatchers received a call shortly after 7 p.m. Wednesday in the 2900 block of Tremaine Drive to check on a possible suicidal person. When officers arrived, they were ambushed by the man inside the home. 3 police officers were struck by gunfire. 1 officer was hit in a metal shield he was carrying. A 2nd officer was hit in his bulletproof vest, and a 3rd officer was grazed. All the officers have been released from the hospital as of this morning and are doing well. The suspect retreated into his home, and an 11-hour standoff began. SWAT officers eventually sent in a robot into the home to check on the status of the shooter. The suspect then opened fire on the robot. According to police, after barricading himself for about 10 hours, police announced the suspect was detained. What's kind of detained alive, which is crucial. What's interesting to me is the incident again highlights the need for armed police officers. While many in the country are proposing that mental health and social workers be the ones, unarmed, mind you, be the ones that go to these types of calls, this is just another example of why that would be a horrible, horrible thing. Can you imagine if it wasn't armed police officers with shields and bulletproof vests that went to the house and unarmed social workers went there instead? We would have 3 fatalities. There's no question about it, no doubt about it. Everyone wants to pretend that this is an isolated incident. These are not isolated incidents, and in fact, they happen quite often. Luckily, this time, it is, maybe you could consider it an isolated incident this time because the police officers didn't suffer serious wounds. And typically, they die. as a response to these. And then here's a news story that I put out this morning, and I want this to go viral. So if I could ask you guys to do anything, it would be to mass share the tweet that I put out. If you go to PT News Network on Twitter, you'll see a tweet. The Antifa journalist that was arrested yesterday and charged with 7 felonies and 2 misdemeanors. I'm sorry. Yeah, 7 felonies and 2 misdemeanors. He's been released from jail without even having to put up any bail. The man accused of setting fire to the Justice Center during the riot Tuesday evening has been released from jail on conditions without having to put up any bail. According to jail records, Jared Bailey Huber, many of you guys may know him as Jared Hub TV, the anarchist Antifa streamer turned full-on domestic terrorist. That's the easiest way to say. He doesn't even stream anymore. He just, apparently destroys their town. It's not even his town. He doesn't even live in Portland. He lives in Damascus, Oregon, from what I understand, or that's where he was raised. Anyway, he was released Wednesday, just hours after being arrested. He was arrested around 1:35, or that's when he was booked in, and then he was released sometime yesterday afternoon, evening. After being charged with 7 felonies and 2 misdemeanor charges related to his actions at the riots. His release reason for the slew of charges was listed as pretrial supervision program. It appears that Huber was not even forced to post a bond. Keep in mind, the opening bond for a arson charge, in a first-degree felony arson charge, mind you, is $250,000. All the other felonies he had bail from $2,000 to $5,000. The misdemeanors even had bail set. Mike Schmidt, in all reality, with this release, District Attorney Mike Schmidt continues his path of reckless lawmaking, allowing yet another violent domestic terrorist out of jail just hours after they clearly attacked our judicial system. Schmidt did confirm the charges on Wednesday before releasing Huber, writing, Huber, acting in concert with others, is accused of pushing a dumpster up against the Multnomah County Justice Center and then setting the dumpster's contents on fire. The fire burned intensely and threatened significant damage to the Multnomah County District, the Multnomah County Justice Center, according to court documents. Huber is also accused of spray painting anarchist symbols on buildings and destroying multiple large windows at a coffee shop, a jewelry store, a luxury department store, and Portland City Hall. They really, and I want to point this out because we have 438 people that are being held in D.C. in solitary confinement for their roles at the Capitol for attacking for attacking our judicial system, right? And our legislative system, attacking the Capitol, many of which are nonviolent, didn't commit any crimes to go in there. Yet here's someone that's clearly violent, attempted to light a courthouse on fire while people were in that building. Attack police officers, damage personal property, and he's been released without having even to put up $1 worth of bail. It's insane. And this should go viral. Some of the charges he's charged with: arson 1, an A felony; criminal mischief 1, a C felony; criminal mischief again, C felony. He's got 3 more of those criminal mischiefs, C felonies. He's also got a criminal mischief in the second degree, A misdemeanor, 2 of those. And then he's got a felony charge for rioting. Again, this man, obviously a criminal, obviously a violent criminal, because I view property destruction as a violent crime, especially when you're trying to burn a building that has people inside it. For some reason, he was released with no bail, and there's no accountability still in Portland. If I lived in Portland right now, I would be protesting the hell out of this. I would be calling news stations. I'd be calling the DA. I'd be filing petitions. I'd sue the DA. I would literally not stop until this is, enough is enough. Everyone asks, when do we stop? When is enough is enough? Right now. Take that tweet that I put out, and every single one of you, I don't even know how many are watching, I'm not paying attention. Every single one of you start retweeting it. If you're on Facebook and not Twitter, start, putting it out on Facebook. Make it go viral. There's no reason why the general public should not be aware of what happened in Portland on Tuesday, and the fact that the DA there does not care. And the fact that the DA, by all accounts, is just allowing it to happen and is releasing people without any bail. And allowing them to go back out and do this kind of stuff. It's insane. And keep in mind, this is the man that is suspected and has been identified by the post-millennial as the one who made that stupid video threatening to kill the mayor of Portland. The post-millennial identified Jared Huber as the person behind the video where they said, if the mayor does not resign, it will be his blood that spills next in the city streets. This is a violent criminal that should not be on the streets, and yet, for some reason, he is. It does not make any sense to me. I am not a lawmaker in Portland, nor do I even live in that part of the hemisphere, but yet, it's equally as frustrating because nobody's going to talk about it. Every single news organization yesterday, including mainstream media, all talked about what happened in Portland, Oregon on Tuesday. Every single one, including CNN, very briefly, but they did talk about it. Now you know the people that are responsible for that, nobody's going to talk about it anymore. Which is, it's a shame. That if I could request that you guys do anything, it would be to make that go viral, to ask those questions, to stop allowing this to happen, to stop, and to force mainstream media, force local news, ask them why they're not reporting on this in such a way. Because as of right now, I don't think a single news organization besides me besides mine has published the fact that Jared Huber. Many published that he was arrested. Nobody has published the fact that he's been released while facing 7 felonies and 2 misdemeanors. It's insane. It's insane. Anyway, speaking of insane, let's get to the main talking point that I wanted to yesterday, or that I wanted to talk about this morning. The news is pretty quick this morning. Many of you guys may or may not have seen we played like the latter half of it, of the House Oversight Committee and Reform, or the House Committee on Oversight and Reform yesterday, which was chaired by Raskin. And the title of I don't even remember what it was something to do with white supremacy. It was the 5th meeting they have on it, and domestic, white supremacy and the links to militia, blah, blah, blah. One of the things that's interesting, I'm not going to talk about whether it was real or not. The only thing I want to point out is that every single time people brought up BLM or extremism, people like Tlaib and some of the other ones, Presley and all them, they just tried to direct the conversation back to white supremacists, saying that this hearing was about white supremacy. It wasn't about domestic terrorism, or whether people believe that BLM is a domestic terrorist organization, which, most with the brain do. The thing that's kind of interesting about it, and the thing that I'm going to dive into a little bit here, is Raskin at the end of the meeting, he gave reference and he said 67% of all the domestic terrorist attacks reported in 2020 were committed by white supremacists. That is false. And he cited a report by, who was it by? Let me see, I got it open here. He cited a report by the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Now, that is a think tank. They claim to be bipartisan. They're 19% federally funded. And then I think 30% corporate donors are the ones that fund all this. One of the things that's interesting in the beginning of this report, so there's a couple of things. Raskin said one thing that was incorrect yesterday. He said 20% of the attacks, the domestic terrorist attacks in the United States were committed by white supremacists. That's factually incorrect. Even if you look at the data set provided by, CSIS, it's wrong anyway when looking at the data set that they won't provide publicly, but we're able to get it. But the bigger issue is the data set that they calculated included 61 incidences from January 1st until August 31st. It didn't include any outside. You know what it also didn't include? Any of the riots in Portland, except one where Michael Reinhold killed killed the Patriot Prayer, supporter. Oh God, Jay Danielson. I almost forgot his name. That I was gonna feel shitty about that. Where they killed Jay Danielson. That's the only one that they included in Portland at all. They didn't attack, they didn't include any of the attacks on the federal offices or the Justice Center. They didn't include any of the riots that took place there. So that's obviously shows that it's skewed. But some of the other things that are pretty interesting about this is the way they start off this report. It said some U.S. government agencies have outlined the threat from domestic extremists, though most have not provided recent data about terrorist incidents. In its Homeland Threat Assessment released October 2020, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security concluded that racially and ethnically motivated violent extremists, specifically white supremacists, will remain the most persistent and lethal threat in the homeland. The report also assessed that anarchists and other individuals inspired by anti-government and anti-authority ideologies posed a threat, but it did not provide any data to back that up. The Federal Bureau of Investigation similarly argued that the top threat we face from domestic violent extremists is from racially and ethnically motivated violent extremists, including white supremacists. Nevertheless, FBI officials have not publicly released their data. So this report goes on to say, to help fill this gap, that this analysis provides new data on domestic terror threat in the United States. What's really funny about this is this whole Center for Strategic and International Studies article, which everyone can look up. It's called The Jones War Comes Home Volume 2 is what this report is. They also do not release their data. It's so stupid. They chastise the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI for not releasing data when they say that white supremacists are the biggest threat. And then in this report, which they say 67% of all the domestic terror incidents that they took in their data set are committed by white supremacists, they also do not release their data set. It's so silly. But a couple of these we can break down really quick because they're wrong and they're lying, and they do all this double negative stuff in here, which proves. And I will be honest, I did send an email this morning to the Center for Strategic and International Studies requesting that I get their full data set, because there are so many discrepancies in this report that Raskin and all these other politicians are using as evidence that I want specific guidance on. Now, some of the issues here, they say, one, that vehicles were used more. There were only 5 fatalities. This is what it says. There were only 5 fatalities connected to domestic terror incidents, is what they say. Now, of those 5, you have 2 from the Boogaloo Boys, the Boogaloo Boy connection, which is far left. And they do double negatives when I said the double negative, because they say the attack or the plotted attack on Gretchen Whitmer, the kidnapping attack, was committed by far right people. But if you actually look into it, you know those were committed by Boogaloo Boys or self-described Boogaloo Boy groupies or whatever you want to call it, anti-Trumpers, anti-police, and anti-government. Those are facts. You can't make it up. But they say that was far right. And then at the same time, just 2 paragraphs later, they say that the attacks on Frank Underhill and the Southern California law enforcement officer that was also killed by the Boogaloo Boy in Southern California, the active military guy, they say that those are far left. So they can't figure out what they're doing, and that's the biggest discrepancy so far. That's the amazing part. Now, one of the things that's also interesting in this report is it talks about how violent terrorist extremism is down, actually, in 2020 in their target year from January 1st to August 31st. They say the occurrences of these crimes are down. What they say, I forgot, I want to try to find it. It's fourfold. So they say domestic terrorist attacks by left-leaning people or far left groups are actually 1 in 4 versus Republican or versus far right. So for every 1 far right attack, there's 4 left attacks. But yet white supremacists account for 67% of the 61 attacks that they limit here. Now they say there were 11 attacks by vehicle where people drove into crowds. That is factually incorrect, because between May 27th and September 15th, there were 104 attacks where people drove vehicles into crowds of protesters. Now, the reason they are not including those, again, is they don't believe that people that are marching through the streets, violating laws, saying anti-government, anti-police rhetoric, which we hear all the time, they do not view them as domestic terrorists, as most people with a brain would. So they are they're excusing those and saying, well, those aren't domestic terror incidences unless the person behind the wheel happens to be white and fits this data set that they have. So they've said 11 of those vehicle attacks were committed by white supremacists. That's factually incorrect. No matter which way you look at it, it's factually incorrect. All of those attacks were committed. Those were, the vehicles driving into those crowds they were victims, essentially. They were victims because the actual domestic terror group was the one marching through the street, chanting fried pigs like bacon and doing all the same chants and anti-government rhetoric that they do, and the racist rhetoric that you hear during all these marches that we've been watching for a long time. So that's one extremely important factual, because that's how they're getting there to that 67%. So if you actually look at the data provided in a smaller data set, mind you, because they're using January 1st to August 31st, I'm using just May 27th to September 5th. There was 104 attacks, and if you subtract the 8 by police officers who were attacked by BLM protesters, there was 90 plus attacks where people felt either one, they were driving into a crowd, or two, they felt so threatened by the domestic terrorists that were beating on their cars that they accelerated forward. So that data set, according to CISA, is completely wrong, which also skews the actual number of white supremacist attacks. Now let's go into the murders, because there were 5 murders that are included in this. Let me talk about that real quick, because this is pretty interesting too. Of the fatalities, despite the large number of terrorist incidents, there were only 5 fatalities caused by domestic terrorism in the first 8 months of 2020. There were 4 times as many far-left terrorist incidents on the same number of far-right terrorist incidents in 2020 as all of 2019. Yet only 5 of the 61 incidents recorded in January to August resulted in fatalities, excluding the perpetrator. Some of these incidents were plot foiled by the FBI, other law enforcement agencies, which suggests that law enforcement agencies were still effective. Okay, this is where it gets interesting. Of the 5 attacks, each of which resulted in the death of at least one individual, one was committed by an Antifa activist. We know that, Michael Rangel. One was committed by a far-right extremist. Remember that, because this is funny. They say one of the fatal attacks was committed by a far-right extremist. This completely skews their 67% number, and I'll get to that in a second. One was by an anti-feminist, and 2 were by adherents of the Boogaloo movement. In the far left attack, Michael Rangel, an Antifa extremist, shot and killed Aaron J. Danielson in Portland, Oregon on August 29th. I'm going to skip over the far right one for a second. On July 19th, anti-feminist Roy Den Hollander shot the family of a U.S. district judge, killing her son and wounding her husband. Finally, there were 2 Boogaloo attacks in 2020. On May 29th, Stephen Carrillo shot and killed Frank Underhill. Pat Underwood. Wow, I've been saying that wrong the whole time. I'm sorry. Pat Underwood, a protective security officer, and wounded his partner in Oakland, California. He then went on to kill a Santa Cruz County Sheriff's deputy in Ben Lomond, California, just a short time later. Now, this far-right extremist. Do you know who they're referring to as a far-right extremist? Do you remember in Austin, Texas, where the BLM extremist, Garrett Foster, pointed an AR-15 at a off-duty sergeant in the Army that was driving Uber? Remember that? Well, because the guy that shot Garrett Foster was in the Army, was a white dude, they are calling him a far-right extremist in this report. They specifically even say far-right extremist Daniel, what was his name? I actually reached out to his attorney this morning as both press and as a citizen, because I wanted to see because he hasn't been charged. Daniel Perry is his name. He hasn't been charged for any of for that shooting at all. Why? Because he was justified. Why? Because a video shows Garrett Foster pointing an AR-15 the same day that he said he was going to kill someone, pointing an AR-15 or an AK-47, I'm sorry, not an AR-15, an AK-47 at Daniel Perry in the vehicle when Daniel Perry pulled his firearm and fired and killed him. This report is calling that a far-right extremist attack. Do you understand? This is the problem with media, and not a single person in media that's referenced this has been like, wait a second, that wasn't a far-right guy. He was a United States Army sergeant. He hasn't been charged in any crime. There's no evidence that he was racially motivated. There's no evidence that he was a far-right, fringe group guy. There's no evidence of anything, excluding the fact that he felt threatened. He pulled a weapon, and apparently the police and the prosecutor and the grand jury that tried to indict him all felt the same way. Yet they are saying he's a far-right extremist and possibly white supremacist. Isn't that interesting? So I did reach out to his attorney this morning, and I said on 2 parts. One, I would be interested to get a public comment, because I'm going to end up writing an article over the next week where, especially if they give me their data set, which I don't think they're going to do because they know what I'm going to do. I'm going to look at every single incident and tell the truth about it. But if I am able to access their data set, I'm going to do a report just like this, except with the real facts, and then publish it out. Because the majority of attacks committed in 2020 were not by white supremacists. Anyone that's been watching what actually happened in this country knows that already. You know it wasn't, white supremacists, but for some reason this keeps getting pushed along, and it's very entertaining to me. But anyway, I reached out to his attorney this morning asking for comment on this government-funded think tank that claims to be bipartisan, labeling his client, who has never been convicted or even charged with any offense, as a far-right extremist, if they would be willing to give a comment. And then I asked, on a personal level, wouldn't that make a good lawsuit? A federally funded think tank being sued by a person for calling him a far-right extremist. Wouldn't that be a really money-grubbing lawsuit right there? So I'm hoping that within the next 2 or 3 weeks, this law offices files a lawsuit against CSIS, because they lied. They lied to the American public. And if you take out the crime that was committed there, it also skews that number. That's 67% of all attacks. That's what's really important for everyone to remember, is there's no accountability anymore in anybody. They don't need to prove that they're right. They don't need to prove that they're wrong. Literally, right now, people can just say stuff, and then it goes off as facts. Senator Raskin, and keep in mind, all these politicians, they can't be held liable for anything they're saying, except by their peers, and nobody does that. But Imagine if there's more companies and more outlets and more think tanks that put out these actual reports that directly contradict these reports. The FBI says the biggest threat against America is white supremacist domestic terrorism, but won't provide data to get to that, how they got to that. Homeland Security says the biggest threat is white supremacists, but they won't provide any data on how they get to that. CSIS says the biggest threat, or 67% of all domestic terror incidents in those one area from January 1st to August are committed by white supremacists, but they won't provide the data. And then the little bit of data they do provide is completely flawed. It's not real at all. It's not. I mean, it's literally not real. The attacks that they're saying are not real. They're made up. They want to obfuscate, but that's not the right word, abscond from their duty. I mean, it's so nuts. And here's my question. And as I said, and I said this to the CISA in the email this morning, or CSIS, I asked them if they're going to expand their data set and do a new report, including all the offenses from September 1st to December 31st. Because you know why? And I know they're not going to do it. And here's the reason why. Because there were no white supremacist domestic violent extremist attacks from September 1st to December 31st. But there were a lot of far left attacks. So the reason they're not going to do it is because it would disprove this, and they would lose all their funding, because the people that are funding these think tanks are not people that actually want the truth to come out. They want to further their narrative. That's why Homeland Security, the FBI, and this think tank are all putting out identical reports. What I think is the most amusing is that this think tank put out a report criticizing the FBI and Homeland Security for not providing their data sets, while not providing their own data set and how they get to their information. It's very, very amazing, huh? It's so silly. I mean, just in September, this skews their reports anyway. On September, I believe it was September 5th, a BLM activist drove her car into 2 people. Now, if you're looking at 11 examples of domestic violence extremism or hate crimes. Oh God, can you imagine if they don't include hate crimes. Like if you spray paint an anarchist thing, or you write all crackers must die, or what, all the other racial things that are written on all these, they don't include those in domestic terrorist attacks against the United States, as they don't include what happened at the Capitol a couple of weeks ago as a domestic terrorist attack on the Capitol. They do, however, classify what happened as January 6th as a domestic terror attack. It's very odd. It's very odd how they keep pushing this narrative and not being truthful. Does that not, like, it really makes you sit there and go, like, what is the end game? Is it just to vilify a huge, portion of America, or is it to be honest, or is it just to say, hey, here is my truth, and now you have to believe it? I don't know what the end game is. And I'm hoping that I get a response from CSIS today, because I would love to have access to the data set that they gathered this information from, because the only incidences I can get are the 5 murders. And if I can already disprove the 5 murders committed thus far, and say, well, one of those attacks, 2 were far left. We know, well, actually 3 were far left. You have the Antifa murder and the 2 Boogaloo movement murders. Again, and there's so many discrepancies, because they say the attack or the applauded kidnapping of Gretchen Whitmer was not a left-leaning attack, even though it clearly was. It was committed by Boogaloo Boys as well. They don't include the Boogaloo Boys that are arrested for working with Hamas. They don't include the Boogaloo Boys that were plotting against Trump supporters on Inauguration Day, because that's this year. They don't include the Boogaloo Boys that are arrested for shooting at protesters at the BLM protest in Louisville, or shooting at cars while they were providing security for the BLM protests in Louisville, because again, that was this year. But when the new reports do come out, I tell you what, they are going to be so skewed from the narrative that we are never going to see them, because they're not going to put them out. They're just not. They're just going to be like, nope, white supremacists are the biggest threat, as they maintain now. That's why yesterday during that hearing, you have really good insight. You have Congress people that get up and say, hey, listen, can any of you guys tell me what the difference of what happened in Portland on Tuesday night versus what happened on January 6th is? And nobody could answer the questions. Nobody can, because it's just different. Nobody cares. Nobody wants to say, well, yeah, them attacking our judicial system and police and vandalizing businesses it's not the same as the Capitol. And you know why? Maybe if Raskin and all those people were sitting inside that Justice Center yesterday or Tuesday night as people were trying to burn them alive, maybe then would they have some sympathy. Maybe they should talk to the janitors, or that place, I believe, holds a very small number of prisoners as well. Maybe they should talk to all the people that were inside that building, when it tried to set ablaze, and feel it and see how they feel. But again, the media doesn't care. The media doesn't pay enough attention to it. Nobody does. But, it is what it is. No talk, Angry Viking, in my chat, please. No talk. But yeah, it's crazy when you really think about it from a whole, and you think about it from the big picture. We are in a misinformation warfare category of our United States, a misinformation category. It's a war. They are literally spreading misinformation as fact. We heard that yesterday in the hearing. Raskin says 67% of the domestic terrorist attacks in 2020 were committed by white supremacists. Based on the information I just told you, it's fact. It's false. This whole report, this federally funded report that has been broadcast everywhere, New York Times, Wall Street, everywhere, and has been referenced hundreds of times on CNN since its publication, is false. And I just proved that and I'm just a guy that sits here, and I woke up this morning and I'm like, you know what? Something doesn't make sense. There's no way, because we've been watching what happened over the past year. This is literally what I was doing. First cup of coffee. This is my 3rd cup. It's still not even empty. First cup of coffee this morning. I'm sitting there talking to my wife about the news, and I'm like, it doesn't make sense. And she's like, what? And I'm like, what happened yesterday in that hearing? The data that he provided, it just doesn't add up based on what I saw, not even what I researched yet. And then I'm sitting there on my phone, drinking my coffee, and I start looking, and I'm like, it's wrong. This is not true. For one, calling Daniel Perry a far-right extremist, I hope they sue the crap out of you. Because I can honestly say, if I was Daniel Perry and I was involved in that situation, and anybody called me a white supremacist or a far-right extremist, especially with military service, I would own that think tank. I would sue the shit out of them. And I hope he does that. If anyone knows him, show him this video, show him this report. You can't retract the report. It was just mentioned, and this report has been gone through over and over and over. This report has hit committee hearings for months and months and months. They've referenced this as fact. Turns out it's false. My video is not going to get enough play. Not enough people are going to pay attention and be like, And that's the problem. That's the whole idea behind our new venture with the Citizen Stringer thing. Is the only way we can actually affect change in this country is by doing it ourselves. We can't rely on our elected officials. We can't rely on anybody else. I must have 20 or 30 different emails from fans across the United States that are all either one sitting on new boards, they ran for boards or they asked to get appointed to boards by their local, or people that are running. We have people that are running from everything from city council members to county reps to state legislators that have contacted me and said, Steve, what you said struck a chord and I'm running for office. That's amazing. That's amazing. We need more people to do it. We need more people also to do deep dives into this kind of reporting. If you hear something repeated on mainstream media, prove that it's not real. Prove, or at least bring enough question into it that it has to be questioned, and people have to be like, whoa, that's not true. Because especially when you're working with data sets, if you have something that is wrong and you're working on percentages and you have one thing that is wrong or marked as the wrong category, it skews the entire report. I mean, these are data scientists. I'm just a business guy. I'm not a journalist. I'm just a business guy and a one-time not successful, now successful business person that decided that we had a gap in our media that needed to be filled. I'm not a data scientist. These guys are data scientists. So they can't tell me that this wasn't intentional, that this error in calling Daniel Perry a far-right extremist wasn't deliberate, because I could say it was. And I'm not even going to back down that. It was a deliberate attempt to skew the data. The fact that they didn't even mention a single attack in Portland, Oregon, well, they were literally they chanted anti-government stuff, which is one of the qualifications for terrorism, and while committing violence, that is another one. I mean, they're clearly, it meets the definition of domestic terror, but people don't want to admit it. It's so weird what's going on. We heard yesterday too, and I want to just show everybody how important this is. Yesterday, remember yesterday when someone said it's hard to do when people are fact checked into oblivion on Facebook. You are right; it is hard. It is very hard to do. But that's one of the reasons why we're building Citizen Stringer out. But it's not just that. You have to post actual facts. If you back up your facts, do you know why we've been fact checked 3 times, and all 3 times the articles that we were fact checked on, they had to withdraw their fact check? Because we carry receipts. Every time we write something, we back it up. We don't write anything on a whim. Even if it's an opinion, it's still backed up enough that they can't fact check us. 3 separate times Facebook fact checkers have put that label on it. 3 separate times they had to remove it under threat of lawsuit. Because I will, I back up everything I say and everything I do in life now, and that's the way I've learned. I don't hide from anything. If someone wants to say, well, what you wrote is not true, then my argument is prove that it's not true, because I have reason and I have proof that it is. And so that's why 3 different times so far, the fact checkers have tried to fact check me. 3 different times they all had to do their retractions or to simply delete it. That's what 2 of them did. They were like, oh, we never fact checked you. Sorry. I'm like, bullshit. I have screenshots. Anyway. I'm just saying, we have to be better than, well, it's not even that we have to be ourselves. We don't need to be better than anybody else. We don't need to change the way we are. We have to prove that the things that they're saying, the way that they're doing things are incorrect. And start with reports like this. Start with the things that you see on CNN and the things that are said and the things that are stupid. Start with Twitter. When someone says something and you know that it's false and you have the evidence to prove it's false, do so. That is how we change it. Like, for example, Jared Huber. That kid is a violent person. We've known it for a while. He gets arrested. He gets released without no bail. That should be a national story. We don't have a national platform now, but like, for example, right now on social media, plus probably hundreds watching on the apps. Right now on social media, we have 859 people. If 859 people all go to that Twitter and retweet that tweet, it's going to get seen by more people. And maybe Fox News will call out the hypocrisy, or maybe even CNN will be like, hey, this guy that lit the Justice Center on fire has been released with no bail. Why are they being released, but the people at the Capitol that stormed the Capitol are still being held in solitary confinement, including the nonviolent ones? Why is it that the guy that's suspected of being the man behind the video threatening a sitting mayor in the United States has been released with no bail after committing additional crimes? Very interesting way to look at it. How come, the mainstream media isn't, how come Fox News on repeat every single day isn't mentioning John Sullivan? Like, here's your daily recap. John Sullivan is still outside of jail and it doesn't make any sense and we don't know why, but we're going to remind you every day. They're lucky I'm not in charge of a major news organization. I'm in charge of PT News, but I'm not in charge of, like a Fox News, because it would be honest. Our ratings would be through the roof, but it would be honest. Someone said they actively change facts, definitions, and erase articles. Go back to hard copies. Yep, back everything up. That's the thing. Like you have to copy it and keep everything. Yeah, they did. One of the big things they did was what they say, the Israeli-Palestine conflict is great for white supremacists or something like that, or for the far right. And then they changed their headline. I think that was the Washington Post. And they just changed their headline, trying to pretend like it never happened. And that happens way more than you know. It happens so often. I called out the Atlanta Journal-Constitution for doing the same thing. Because they write a fake headline, and then when they find out it's not true, they just delete it and pretend it never happened. I don't delete tweets. And if we do correct a headline, it because we write about it and then we reshare the article out. That's why. And we don't do it very much because, again, the way we report is different. We report facts and not fiction. With that said, I'm going to share, and like I was saying, that's one of the reasons why we're doing everything we're doing here with the Citizen Stringer. For anyone that doesn't know what Citizen Stringer is, here's the infomercial part of the show. I know some of you guys hate it, but we have to do it on every show every day. You'll see a link that's in the description of this video. You'll also see it on the social media chats. I'll put it in the PTNN chat as well. We are rebranding PT News Network in the coming months. Sooner than that, probably not next week, but the week after. Once I get settled up, we'll rebrand the website as Citizen Stringer. And then let me explain this project and what we're doing. We're building a platform where we're going to crowdsource the news, from video to opinions to rants. Everyone loves my rants. So imagine where you take our news brand, you take our live shows like this one, you take our podcast and everything, plus you add a news. The only way I could say is like TikTok kind of, but with just news. And whether it's videos and all that, and it's a monetized system, meaning that you can make money based on views, and you can make money if you're doing a report for us, and basically that's what we're doing. So we've created this thing called Citizen Stringer, which is going to allow people to contribute to the news. Instead of us just constantly being like, oh, buy our shirts or buy this or buy that, we wanted to find a new way to involve you in what we're doing. And to contribute to breaking the news. You have that story that happened in your little town that you think needs to be on national news, but it's not getting the attention. You will go and make a rant video, or you will go and write an article and submit it to us. And if it meets our guidelines, we will publish that, and you'll make money off of it. But it gets those news out to a much larger audience. So that's what we're in the process of building right now. There's a link in the chat for all of you guys. I really, really appreciate it if you guys could contribute. We're doing a crowdfund. Instead of giving away equity in the company, we're doing a crowdfund, again, because we're crowdfunding the news, or crowdsourcing the news. So why not crowdfund this up? And then once the app is released in September, October, we may do an equity raise and stuff at that point. But what I would really, really ask you guys to do is go and contribute to it. Help us do it. So far, we're at 5,200, which is about 2% of our 200,000 goal. And the reason why we have 200,000 is because, one, we're going to hire more people here. Two, the app development in itself, this 50% of this, if it goes towards the app development, only covers 25% of the actual app development. The cheapest quote I've got is 400,000 to develop this app, because there's just so much going into it in the long run. But what I would encourage you all to do, again, the offer still stands. Anyone that has a PTNN membership that wants to just make a contribution but may not be able to afford having a PTNN monthly membership and doing the Indiegogo, make a contribution to Indiegogo. I will immediately make your PTNN membership free forever. PTN eventually is going to be free. All of our content, and when I say free, you may have to pay $1 because I got to lock up that chat, because people don't want idiots in the chat all the time. But yeah, it's free. So do that. I really appreciate it. Share this, share it out, share all the articles out. Keep doing what you're doing. Again, just a little update for what I am doing personally. I am moving to Virginia. The next week is going to be hit or miss. There's going to be no regularly scheduled shows from me. Adam and Scott and Quincy should still be doing their regular shows at their regular times on PTNN. So Freedom Flashpoint should be live from 8 to 10. And then The Reckoning should be live from 10 to 12 every day, Monday through Friday, East Coast time. My show, which typically runs, from 7 to whatever, is not going to be going on because I'm driving. So tomorrow I leave here after I drop my kids at school, driving to Virginia. I got to offload this trailer myself. Then I got to go. I'm helping my mother move because she just bought a house in North Carolina. So I'm helping her. Then driving all the way back to Virginia, dropping off the trailer, driving all the way back to Florida, picking up my kids and my RV and my wife and dogs, and then driving all the way back to Virginia. And so hopefully the travel is going to be done. Essentially it's 6,800 miles in 7 days. So it should be rather interesting. But so in terms of my shows, if there's breaking news or if I'm driving and I want to rant, I'm just going to go live at no specific time. So yeah, just stay tuned. Make sure you're subscribed. And someone said, "Can you get a government grant for this?" Yeah, we thought about. I thought about doing the grants or even taking out loans to make it easier. I just don't want to. I didn't want to. Someone said, "Are you streaming the Biden thing?" No, we're not streaming that crap in Oklahoma. Or if you were asking somebody else, I don't know if somebody else is. We're not going to. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of driving, a lot of stuff going on. So what I would ask you guys to do, you've helped me build this whole thing. All 700 of you watching on social media right now. Here's a better question. If you can't contribute to this Indiegogo, will you guys do me a favor? And I mean this, from the bottom of my heart. Will you go on your social medias and share the link that I just put in the chat? Just share it out and just say, hey, this guy is trying to create something different. Please take a look at it and share it. Because if 700 people share that link out, we will be able to achieve this goal. And I'll be honest, we're doing it anyway. Even if this goal isn't reached, we're doing it anyway. Because I'll self-fund it. I'll take out loans. I'll sell my soul. We'll start having to put corporate advertising up. We'll do whatever we have to do because I firmly believe in it. My wife agrees with it. Everyone I've talked to it in detail about the program is super excited about it. So what I would ask is every single one of you that are watching, if you could share this, I'll owe you. That's the only thing I could say. I'll owe you. Rusty Nails said you don't have social media anymore. Send it to your email friends. Send it to everybody. Someone said, have I tried to get on Tim Pool? I haven't. I don't try to get on any shows. In fact, I turn them down. And that's going to be something I change too, starting as soon as I get up into Virginia. For one, it may surprise some of you guys. I have a stage fright issue. So I can make videos and talk to the camera all day long. If I had producers sitting here, I would have a harder time doing it. I'd jumble my words quite a bit more than I already do. I'll lose focus. And I found that out when I worked in broadcasting because my company was previously almost acquired before I started getting into politics, just when we were covering the logistics side. And I went and worked for a company broadcasting, and they essentially were going to buy my show and employ me over there. And I had a very hard time doing it in front of other people. Plus, I don't like to be told what to say. But yeah, that's the deal. I mean, everything's going to change when we go up. My shows are going to be a little bit more produced once we get all settled up in Virginia after the camping trip and all that. But for the next month, essentially for the month of June, I'm not going to have a real schedule. I'll try to do it as best as I can. But, we're going on the RV trip, we're camping, and I'm writing a book. So we're really doing a lot. So these videos and the news updates are going to be a little bit more relaxed. I'm trying to get into the mini documentary things. I want to do a year in review for what actually happened in the United States. So that's a project I'm working on now, and I'm putting about 7 days on it to try to finish it. But yeah, it's there's a lot. There's a lot going on, and we're gonna do. I mean, this Citizen Stringer thing. I'll be honest with you. It's the most ambitious venture I've ever thought of. It's the most ambitious goal that I've ever tried to achieve, and it's one that I feel extremely strong about, because I think that this is the way that news is reported. When I was speaking to one of the developers, and she said, well, she's younger, in her 20s, and she's like, we don't watch the news, we don't watch Fox News, CNN, we don't watch any of that stuff. We get our news from Instagram and TikTok and the short little videos and watching people rant about it. And I'm like, wow. I mean, imagine if you use that into a much larger scale, and you start bringing those people to a centralized location to say, hey, listen, here is an outlet where you can express the news, not based on politics, mind you. We're not going to allow anybody to get up there and be like effing Democrats and this, or effing Republicans. We're not going to allow that kind of rhetoric. What we want is people to be able to speak freely about news and current events and things that are going on, and then communicate and have proper discourse back and forth. And it's a very ambitious goal, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it one way or the other, with or without you guys. But the link, again, is in the chat. I really appreciate you. Someone said you could write the book on what happened, called The Year in Review. Yeah, I mean, I kind of like one man, one scooter, in a divided America. And I've only been on a scooter once, but I really just think that that's the best name for the book for the people that know me, because it's going to make people question the book. Someone said, do we sign up now or wait till next week on Citizen Stringer so our member will continue? No, so if you are a PTNN member and you're going to contribute through Citizen Stringer and you're already a member, what I ask you to do is contribute on Citizen Stringer and then send me a message. Send me an email to social@ptnewsnetwork.com, and with just saying, I made a contribution on Indiegogo. Here's the name it's under. And as soon as I see it, it will be delayed after tomorrow, but as soon as I see it, I'll immediately go into our PTNN and switch your subscription over to free. So, and the reason why I'm doing that is because I want you guys. Yes, I make money off of the PTNN site. I'd rather have that money go into the Indiegogo account, because what it allows people to do, the more traction it gets on the account, the more Indiegogo is going to go and promote that, because they make money. And they've already done it so far. I mean, we've already had, I think 6% of the contributions that have been raised so far come from people that don't watch this show, just believe in this. And that's with very, very minimal advertising. So if we get it more, it'll be amazing. But yeah, what I would ask everybody to do, man, this is a huge deal. It's something that's amazing, something that we're going to do. Let's do it. Again, links in the description. Again, sorry for spamming it. Please, guys, share it to all your friends. Share it to your social networks. Say this guy has got ambitious goals and he's going to do it. Share that link out. That's right there, and go. And again, it's amazing. Someone said, if you plan on making money with a drone, you have to be certified. That is correct. Yeah. What about for those who signed up with the lifetime PTNN? Yeah, that's one of the things I said yesterday. If you signed up for the lifetime member on PTNN, go make a contribution on Citizen Stringer. Send me the receipt. I'll send you back the money for the lifetime thing, and you'll still get the box. I'd much rather you just go and do that. I got a couple of emails yesterday where people are like, hey, I'll do that. Or one person said it only charged them half, which I don't know why it did that. You can go ahead and make the other half, and then you'll be free on PTNN. All the original 1 year members, the $12.99, you're all due for, re-ups in the next, 4 or 5 months. If you go and do that, you won't be re-up. Anything like that. As for now, all the plans. So like if you're on the t-shirt plan and you go and you say, okay, well, the app's not going to be built for 5 days or 5 months or whatever, and that you're on the $33 a month t-shirt plan, just literally do $100 thing, you'll still be on the t-shirt plan. It's just going to be free, and you'll still get the t-shirts. If you're on the lifetime plan and you switch over and you make your contribution to Citizen Stringer, I'll refund the lifetime, so you're not double paying unless you tell me, hey, I don't care, just keep it, and you're still going to get the lifetime backer boxes that we send out in July or June 8th. Hopefully it works. Hopefully you guys understand. Any questions, email social@ptnewsnetwork.com. I have to go pack this trailer and listen to this Steven Crowder episode. I appreciate all you guys for watching, and you guys are all effing sick. Bye.